The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today on the panel are Victor Lambs. Hey, Victor.
Hi, Dom.
And Father Joseph Sund. Hey, Father.
Howdy.
Folks, before we get into today's show, I want to tell you about another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy called The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows. And you can find that wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/secrets. So before we get to our main topic, there was a little bit of news about Apple announcing pre-sale date for, the on-sale date for the new Vision Pro. I'm not getting one. I can't justify $3,500 for what's essentially early beta. This is like the original iPhone for what was it, $900 or something. Yeah, I'll wait till it comes down. But I was very excited to hear it. Anyway.
That's a lot of money.
That is a lot of money. Well, and then when you get the $3,500 plus tax, you got to get a second battery. You know what I mean? Then you're over $4,000. For $4,000, I could get like a brand new MacBook Pro all decked out. Yeah,
and they probably sell their own like lens wipes or something too, don't they? That's
it's included. They've thrown in the cloth, like that $50 cloth is included.
Lanyap.
Yeah. So
for $4,000, I could buy my first car 4 times.
Yeah, I could buy my first car. I could have a fleet of my first car. Let me put it that way. Our main topic today is we're going to do some a little fun. We want to, this is the beginning of a new year. So what's the thing to do is to look back and look at the year behind us. And I wanted to talk about our favorite tech of 2023. That's the favorite tech that each of us experienced. It didn't have to be new in 2023, but maybe we either got it new for the first time, or it was important to us in some way in the year. So with that said, there's some interesting commonalities in our lists, and you will see reflect our personalities somewhat. But I figure, why don't we start with you, Father Joseph? What was the tech that was important to you in 2023?
I think my first pick is going to shock you. It is the Steam Deck. I'm trying to remember if my Steam Deck arrived in 2022 or in 2023. I'm wanting to say it was early 2023 that I finally got it. But regardless, the majority of my playtime on it, as Steam sent me my guilty summary at the end of the year, which is very sad to look at some days, which is what games did you play the most? How many hours did you play? That's kind of like looking at your screen time on your iPhone. You really didn't want to know that?
Yeah, right.
But then also, what games, but then the device you use the most. And we'll just say that my PC was down to like 25% of my gaming. Most of it was done on my Steam Deck. So I could see that I had utilized it well and did a lot of gaming. As you may remember, I did on our Steam Deck episode fully record a podcast on it. I'm not doing that again. It worked.
We'll
just say it worked.
My nerves were shot by the end, but yeah.
It was nerve-wracking. So it does work as a computer, but not as easy as I would like it to be. But so that was my Steam Deck. I don't think I'll be dropping the money to upgrade to a better display on it or anything. I may at some point, probably this year or next year, I might actually have the guts to crack it open and upgrade my drive in it. The warranty's expired on it, so, now I can have fun. So should I just keep going down my list here?
Yeah, what else do you got?
Okay. Okay, and I did this one as a pick of the week a while back, was the Onyx Books Nova Air 2, which it is a tablet that is e-ink. And so it's, if you want to like mix your Kindle and iPad together, that's what this is. It's Android based. Primarily, I get my best use out of this teaching. So we read from a lot of books when I'm teaching, and I like to have my highlights and be able to do all that. And I also am very easily distracted, even while I'm teaching. And so to keep myself on an e-ink device is much better than putting a laptop in front of myself. And because I hold my students to, yes, the techie priest probably uses the least amount of technology in the school in this classroom. I do not use Chromebooks or things a lot in my class. And so since I don't have my students use them a lot, I try to hold myself to a similar standard that I hold them. So it's been good to have that for my own text. Most of these have been picks of the week, actually, but that probably is a good thing about my picks of the week. I have the Epilogue Operator, which this was a little thing that you could hook up to your computer and play your Game Boy cartridges, and to also legally or supposedly legally create ROMs of your own cartridge games. And so just a great little $45 device that I continue to use and love, and it works well together with the Steam Deck as well.
One thing you're overlooking there is that you can actually write games back to blank cartridges. And after you mentioned this as a pick of the week, I picked one of these up. It took a little while to arrive because they had sold through their initial run. But I've been working on a Game Boy game that I've been developing using GB Studio. I haven't spent a lot of time developing it recently, but I do have it as a Game Boy ROM file, and I was actually able to write it to a Game Boy writable cartridge and then play it on an original Game Boy hardware. And, the kids had a lot of fun playing, Dad's game on the original Nintendo Game Boy.
That's really cool. Now, original Nintendo Game Boy or like a Pocket?
The original Game Boy, the Game Boy Advance SP, I think is the one they're using the most. We also have some Nintendo DSs that have Game Boy slots on them, but we do have the original Game Boy Color, Advance SP, Advance Micro. So we're covered in the Game Boy department.
So both Victor and I I'll let Victor do his list, but you'll see a commonality on a couple things here. My fourth choice, which I don't know, will your wife be mad that I made you go buy something again with this one too?
We'll see.
We'll see. Okay. It's My Arcade came out with the Game Station Pro, which is the Atari 200 Games Plus. And so this is officially licensed by Atari, which they've been a lot better these days about embracing their retro and embracing their fans who love Atari for being Atari. And so this comes with 200 games. It doesn't come with the Activision games, which is disappointing. But I actually found this I was back in Omaha, and I stopped into an Overstock store that was by the hotel I was staying in. And they happened to have this as an open box, damaged box for $40, which the retail of it's $99. And so I saw this as a sign from God that it needed to be reviewed by me and brought to the Secrets of Technology.
Did a light shine from heaven upon it on the shelf and angels sing, ah?
There was a light shining from it, but it was RGB.
Okay.
So,
there you go.
So I don't think that was God's light, but I did see it as a good opportunity to review something. I found out, though, that it has an SD card in it, and you are able to play ROM files from Atari, Nintendo, Sega.
Oh, wow.
Game Boy on that same thing. So, and generally the controller, I found a lot of people complain about the controller, but Atari fans are ones to complain very easily.
Yeah.
And then the greatest feature of it that when we were looking at it before we started recording here that Victor noticed was it has the paddles on the controller.
Yeah.
So back in your early Atari games, you had the paddles that were kind of like a very delicate volume knob. So if you remember playing like Breakout, where you did the little Pong ball to break the
this was the original game
itself.
controller. I mean, Pong was back and forth, just to turn it up.
A potentiometer.
Yeah.
It also gives you software switches to change the difficulty levels, and the thing that none of the units before had, which is changing sensitivity levels for the controllers. So you can do all of those things that you're able to do with hardware on the original 2600. You can do this. I was debating between getting that 2600 plus that I think Victor brought up a while ago, right? And this one. And honestly, this satiated my need to get the 2600 plus for a while.
So before we move on to Victor's picks for his favorite tech, like what reflecting on this and on these lists and these things, like what is 2023 in tech been for you? I mean, it sounds like it's, you've got a couple of at least one productivity thing in there, but there's some stuff in there that kind of relates to, I don't know, the nostalgia, a connection to your past.
So I think a lot of it goes with retro gaming, but also retro to the full. So a lot of 2022 for me was getting back into buying and repairing old technology. So 2022 was when I bought my Tandy Model 100 and fixed that up. And a lot of that was my old man was a nerd, computer programmer for Mutual of Omaha, but it was only later in life that I came to realize, like, my dad gave up all of the nerdy fun things of all the toys he wanted to have to sacrifice to have us in school and to raise 4 kids. And so some fun things with him was just trying to pick some of these things up and fix them up. And only now am I getting to the point that I've got them fixed up enough that when I get back in town, we're able to sit down and play with some of the old things. So it kind of became some things to spend some time with the old man while I still can and bond over those things. So, but then that kind of grew another limb of its own on these old gaming things. My dad's really not the gamer, so that's kind of my own little.
Okay, cool. So Victor, what was your favorite tech of 2024? 2023. We'll get to 2024 later.
Yeah, and like Father Joseph, I do have a gaming tech on my list, but we'll have a bit of a palate cleanser here and go into actually some pseudo productive technology. So at the beginning of the year, actually the prior year 2022, I started to get into 3D printing, and I love 3D printing as a hobby. If you have kids who are technologically inclined, it's a great hobby to do with your kids. Our 10-year-old at the time, he's now 11. He's gotten really good at 3D design. He can make just about anything he can imagine in Tinkercad, and then he sets it up on the printer, and he basically takes the whole thing from start to finish. There, he's gotten very familiar with the technology. But I wanted a Raspberry Pi to act as a print server for my original Prusa Mark III printer, because that would enable me to transfer files wirelessly, wouldn't have to swap out memory cards. But at the beginning of the year, Raspberry Pis were still very, very difficult to come by. I have, extras that I have, as music servers or something, but I didn't want to repurpose one of those. So I started looking at Windows thin client PCs. And these are basically desktop PCs that are the size of a, paperback book, if you will. But have, SSD drives, onboard graphics, Windows 10 Pro, 8 gigabytes of RAM usually, which you can upgrade to 16 gigabytes for another $25. And the cool thing was at the beginning of the year, there were a lot of these that had been leased out to schools right at the start of COVID. So they had never been used. Some of them, never very clearly, these were brand new, but being sold as refurbished. So for around $120 each, I picked up a couple of these Lenovo thin client PCs, which are, as powerful as a high-end laptop would have been a couple of years ago. And then quickly I found out that they were actually they worked very well as desktop PCs, and I didn't want to use them as print servers. So one of them it's the main computer that my wife uses. She does, graphic design and stuff, and is able to use that. And the other one I gave to my son, and he runs, his Minecraft and Minecraft server on that. And then I just, grabbed one of my old Raspberry Pis and used that as the print server after all. But so yeah, if you're looking at, gosh, I need a computer, I need, a desktop PC, I already have a monitor, but I don't want to spend a lot of money, look around at some of these refurbished thin client PCs that, might have been used in offices and stuff, and you can get a pretty good deal there.
I use the HP versions of these, and they're my go-to computer when I need to quickly fill a hole where a computer went down. And so they work well for an office computer, for someone who's doing Outlook, and they're even good enough to run QuickBooks, which takes a little bit of oomph. And so, yeah, I've usually been a Lenovo fan, but most of the stuff we have around is HP. So I tend to stick with the brand that we have around.
Yeah, but definitely, they're excellent replacement PCs if you have kids, and you can reasonably be certain that you can make the PCs safe for their use, and you have an old TV, because most of these have HDMI and DisplayPort outs. You could, for around $120, you can have a pretty good PC for homework and Minecraft at least.
And remember, what will make them last and even longer is installing Linux on them.
It's hard to do when they come with Windows 10 Pro, and that's like an operating system that already costs like the price of the computer on its own.
That's true. That is true.
But and then one fun thing was that this year Prusa, which is Joseph Prusa, basically invented the modern 3D printer market. It's a bit of an exaggeration to say that, but he really iterated on the classic design of the bed slinging, where the bed moves around, with your print on it, and it builds up. He iterated in that design and created his Prusa brand of printers, and he came out with his new design this year, the Prusa Mark IV, which was very exciting. It had some technological upgrades. I bought the kit version of that this year. It takes about 8 to 10 hours to put together. The instructions are very good, but it's, a few metal parts, plastic parts that are 3D printed at his print farm, and probably close to, 400 or 500 little tiny screws. But you put this all together, and at the end you have this 3D printer. I wouldn't recommend it for everyone unless you're like me and you want something that is open source. The software, the hardware is open source. You can print replacement parts if you need to. The fans and stuff are all stock pretty much. There's a couple parts that are proprietary, but even those you'll probably be able to find on Amazon soon. And you like putting stuff together just to see how it works. I'm confident, having put this thing together from scratch, that if I needed to replace basically any part on it, which you do with 3D printers, I'd be able to do that. For someone just getting into the hobby, I wouldn't recommend it. No. I have no experience myself with Bamboo Labs printers, but I know a lot of people who are coming into 3D printing now are using Bamboo Labs, and they just released a $400 printer, the A1, which is basically the same principle, bed slinging. One thing why those aren't good for me necessarily is the software is proprietary. It's a walled garden for the most part. And I wouldn't be confident that I could replace any part on it if I needed to. But yeah, not for everyone, but it was perfect for me because I like spending a couple days just seeing how parts fit together and saying, oh, that's how that sensor works. And
so 3D printing is the thing I really want to get into, but I can't because I don't have the room for it. And that's the long and short of it. I just don't have a place to put something that needs to be stable and undisturbed for long periods of time where noise isn't an issue. And that's just not my house.
Yeah, they're getting quieter, but I mean, if you have a dining room table, you have a place to put a 3D printer. You just have to negotiate.
That is not going to fly in this house, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Just kick one of your kids out.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing too, is if it's a kid's hobby, it's like, hey, you have a little room on your desk in your room, don't you? But yeah, no. So it's a great hobby. Like I said, the kids love it. I've spent the past week 3D printing Daleks, little Dalek models, so that they've been painting and stuff and coloring. And for Halloween, we made a life-size version of Link's Master Sword, complete with scabbard and stuff, for our one of our sons and stuff. So there's a lot of fun projects. Plus, it's cool because while it's printing, you feel like you're being productive, even though you're not doing anything. It's just, you're like, I'm making something. But yeah. But then if you're not feeling productive, you can, of course, play video games. And you were asking, like, why, gaming machines were so high on our list. And I think for me personally, it was, the years of the pandemic, 2021 and even 2022 were like really like go, serious adulting time. And 2023 felt kind of like a bit of a breather or a intermission year. And so one of the things that I loved doing as a kid and even as a adult, before all said adulting happened, was playing games. 2023 I think was the year that these retro game handhelds that are usually made, by companies in China, really, they hit a couple interesting technological and price points here. First is one that just came out a couple of months ago called the R36S retro game console. Nobody knows who makes it, but you can order it from AliExpress. And it's for around $40, and that comes with ROMs and stuff, and we'll get into that a little bit. But for $40, it has like an amazing screen, is powerful enough to play PlayStation 1 and Dreamcast games. It's a perfect form factor. It's about the size of an original Game Boy, but has joysticks and stuff on it. And we've been having a lot of fun with those. And for $40, if you drop it down a well or something, you're not gonna want to follow it down there or anything. So I can recommend that. It's a lot of fun, and Father Joseph does run a version of Linux.
You had me at Linux.
Yeah, and if you do want to step up from that, the one that I actually play most now is called the Powkitty, and we've talked about Powkitty devices on here before. I know Jack has, but the Powkitty RGB 30. And so it's around twice the price, so $80. But the really cool thing is it has a really nice 720 by 720 screen. And you usually don't see screens that are a perfect square aspect ratio, especially at that resolution. And so for retro games like the original Game Boy Color, even the Sega Genesis was at or very close to a 1-to-1, perfect square aspect ratio. It is really amazing to play retro games and not have, letterboxes or black bars, and just have like basically the screen's as tall as the device itself is. And it's just a really fun way to play retro video games. And it still fits in, a shirt pocket.
So I don't have to play with chubby Ash anymore on Pokemon.
No, you can basically have your exact pixel for pixel. It's been a lot of fun. Plus, our older son is really into customizing and modding, the firmware on this sort of thing. And so I give it to him and say, hey, set this up for me, and he gives it back, and it does all sorts of cool things, like plays video previews of the games and stuff. But definitely, the game I spent the most amount of time with this year, and the family did too, was The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom for Nintendo Switch. When that came out, I mean, we've all played Breath of the Wild, which was the prequel to this, or the immediately preceding this game, and we've played all the other Legend of Zelda games. And when this came out, I figured that I should probably buy a couple of copies because the kids have Switches. My wife has a Switch. I have a Switch. We're probably going to want to share it. And it quickly became apparent that like 2 copies of this game was not going to be enough. And so we would sit down and all of us would be playing Tears of the Kingdom, just kind of sitting around the couches. And it's funny because we all had our different way of approaching the game. I was the, explorer, find all the secrets, dig deep into all the caves and explore all the islands. Our son, who's really into, role-playing games, was like, how do I get the best gear? How do I get the best weapons? How do I, level those up as much as I can? Our son, who's into technology, the one who likes to design and build things, just spent his entire time with the game making crazy cars and extremely long bridges and flying boats and stuff. And it was just a lot of fun to do that. I don't want to say how many hours I spent playing that game, but it's well over 100 and some hours. But yeah, but it's a really fun game, and it's one of those where there's a story. It's a good story. There's stuff you can do, but it's also a sandbox that you can just kind of have fun with.
Yeah. So that'll lead into my list of things, because you're raving about Tears of the Kingdom as the best game you've ever played early this year was what led me to finally go out and pick up a Switch for my house. And so I got the Tears of the Kingdom Special Edition OLED one. So I kind of splurged a little bit on that. And I didn't get very far in. I had to go. I think I'm going to start again. Like, I'm going to go back. I got stuck. I couldn't figure out. I was in the Islands in the Sky portion, and I got all the stuff, and I can't get back to the place. I can't figure out how to get back to where I need to go. And it's been so long since I've done it. I just should start again and figure it out from there. I've also decided that I have no problem having the walkthrough open up on my laptop, and so that I can get hints to get beyond the stuck parts where I am. But nevertheless, you're right. It is a great game. But the funny thing is I ended up having getting Mario Kart and Super Smash Brothers, and one of the things I love about that is they're cooperative play. I got a couple of Bluetooth controllers and to go along with the Joy-Cons, and my kids will all sit in here and play together cooperatively on the big screen, Mario Kart or Smash Brothers, and they have a blast playing together. And I'm like, this is, I mean, they don't have a problem generally playing together, but I just love the fact that they having fun playing this. And then my second youngest, he discovered Super Mario Brothers. I picked up like the original, and so he was having fun just like trying to get through a couple levels of that. It was kind of funny to watch, because he's kind of confounded by how simple, but yet how devious it is. So, that's been great. So the Switch, and we also picked up a Steam Deck this year, and that was, also I thought it would be more for me, but the kids have really embraced it, because we got the EA Play store with it. And so they love, first they went through Jedi Fallen Order, all of them one at a time, just several times in a row. Because we're all Star Wars crazy. And then they found Battlefront. That was the other, and now they play Battlefront all the time when they get screen time. So it's been gratifying watching that. And then for me, it was really my opportunity to start playing some of these Class A games that I never was able to play before, because I don't have a gaming PC. I don't have an Xbox or PlayStation. And so this was my opportunity to check out some of these games. And the funny thing is I find out some of them are actually available. Some of the ones I enjoy the most are actually the ones I can play on my Mac anyway. But nevertheless, having the Steam Deck it's fascinating to me, because I was afraid that these small screens on the Steam Deck or the Switch would be too small to be able to enjoy. But the fact is they're not. They're actually larger than my iPhone. I mean, and I play games on my iPhone or whatever. But I can also connect them to my big screen TV, and it works. I found actually the Steam. There's a Steam Link, I think the app is, and there's an app that I can put on my Apple TV that can stream the Steam Deck to the Apple TV to my big TV, wirelessly, which was awesome, and I can play that way. The lag is great. So that was those two things, and frankly, it's what makes the tech of the year for me is not so much how much I've used it, but how much my kids have enjoyed it. And so that's been really great. I want to do more with the Steam Deck. I'm fascinated by the idea of it as a Linux computer. So I want to kind of dig into that a little more and see what's there. That may be something I do for 2024. My next couple of picks are not conventional, what we think of tech, or at least a couple of them. This year, the 2023, I got involved in a Kickstarter from Anchor.com. Anchor is the maker of all of those smartphone accessories, batteries, cables, all sort of stuff. But they have this whole division of power stuff. They do smartphone batteries. They started getting to bigger batteries. They have this whole new thing with like house backup batteries, emergency power batteries. But they had a Kickstarter last spring for a battery powered cooler, like a cooler you take camping. And I do a lot of camping. I go with my family. I go with scouts, and having something where I didn't have to worry about getting ice and more ice and everything getting soggy, but having a battery pack in it that would last a weekend was fascinating to me. So I went on a limb. I backed the Kickstarter, and I got to tell you, it's been great. Even at home, we had, we're 7 people, but we don't have a garage, so I don't have a room for a second fridge like a lot of people do, or basement or anything. So we had the one fridge for 7 people's worth of food. And I have a stand-up freezer, but having a little bit of overflow space for refrigeration stuff in the kitchen is fascinating. It has really changed things for us and our family, having this cooler that's available that I can just pull out. It's already powered. I don't have to go get ice for it. The whole 9 yards. And it's really been fantastic. And then I can take it with me, camping and keep my stuff cool for the weekend. Or if we're going out for the day, I can just throw it in the van and we'll take it with us. And it works fine. Like I don't have to go get ice for it. I mean, I keep saying like, I don't have to go get ice for it. When you spend a lot of time camping, acquiring ice for your cooler so your food doesn't go bad, it takes up a lot of your brain. There's 3 sizes of the cooler. There's a 30 liter, 40 liter, and a 50 liter. And the 50 liter has 2 compartments, so you can have a freezer on one side and a fridge on the other. And there's an app for your phone, of course, so you can set the temperature and you can change the temperature as you want. So it was pretty useful to have this whole year. So it's really made a big difference for us in a small way, put it that way, if I can. And then something else that's more for my home. Last summer, our our air conditioning went out. We had central air in our house, and we have a outside compressor, an air handler in the attic, and it forces hot air or heat, hot air or cold air, depending on the season, to the house. We have it's also connected to an oil furnace. Well, our AC went out. The compressor went out last summer, and it was old enough that it had the old refrigerant that you can't get anymore. So they told me that you can buy like old stock of the refrigerant, and it would be like $1,000 or some crazy thing and it would leak out eventually anyway because the system was dying. So we ended up having to replace the whole system, and I decided to go with a heat pump to replace everything. We still have our oil furnace because it acts as our and the oil furnace for heat is a northeastern thing, I gather. Most places are either gas or electric, but we still have the oil furnace for water. I didn't replace the hot water heater. It was already heating hot water for us, but it means I don't have to buy as much oil, and it acts as a last resort backup, which did come in handy this past week. I have to tell you about it. But they swap out the compressor outside with the new compressor, and it can, so it can route heat outside or route the cold outside, you know what I mean? Bring the heat in. And then they had to do the attic. But let me tell you, we also had to get everything re-insulated in the attic. Let me tell you, it's been great. Like usually I would have to turn the heat on around mid-October. I didn't turn the heat on in my house until late November. And that's just due to the new insulation. Like, folks, think about re-insulating your house, because it was a huge difference for us. But also just the heat pump, it's quiet, it's effective. Now there are limits to how low the outside temperature can be, because once it gets below a certain point of temperature outside, there isn't much heat for it to drag into your house. I mean, it's just the laws of physics there. But when it gets to that point, it switches to an electric heater element in the air handler. So it's less efficient, but you'll stay warm enough. Now, we had a problem where we had a snowstorm last weekend, and the snow melting off the roof. We don't have gutters, and they were melting into the compressor outside.
Oh, fun. Which
froze it up. And so one morning we're getting up, and it's like the air handler is running and running and running, and it's getting colder and colder and colder in the house. I called the HVAC guy, and he came out and said, yeah, you're going to I have to build something over the compressor to keep the runoff from going into it. So that's kind of an annoyance. But I got to say, I am so happy with this heat pump technology. There was a great series of videos from the Technology Connections YouTube channel where he went through all of how heat pumps work and why they're more efficient, why they're better. And let me tell you, I'm saving a lot of money on oil this winter. It is so great.
This is gonna be a really Nebraska question. Mm-hmm. Do you get many days below 20 degrees?
I'd say we probably get a couple dozen at least. Like, at least through the winter, maybe below 20, we get. Yeah, probably at least 2 or 3 weeks of that. I mean, we've already had a lot of that the last few weeks. Now, there are heat pumps rated to different levels. There are heat pumps rated to 5 below. Those are much more expensive. Ours is rated, I think, to 10 degrees.
Okay.
Yeah. So
yeah, the houses I've been in that have heat pumps, usually about this time of the year in Nebraska, you're done with the heat pump. You go and you switch your thermostat over to emergency, and you give up on the heat pump.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. If you're buying a heat pump, you got to make sure you get the right heat pump for where you live. That's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Because like my in-laws are in Texas, they have a heat pump system mainly for the AC aspects.
That's all they need.
Yeah, and their heat pump is not rated down to below 20 or something, which was a problem when they had that big freeze out a couple of years ago, the Texas ice freeze. They actually were having issues, and they don't have backup heat to go to, so that was an issue. But yeah, when you're doing a heat pump, you work with the HVAC guy, and let me tell you, go to a bunch of different people. I went to a bunch of different contractors, and I got all kinds of different stuff, like contradicting each other sorts of things. You can't do that. That's impossible. Oh, that's not allowed. Sure you can. What are you talking about? We'll do that. I mean, it was just, it was all kinds of, all over the place. And there was, and in my state, Massachusetts, they have huge rebates for heat pump systems, especially if you're doing a complete switch over. It's not just a supplementary. If you're not doing just a partial. If you do a complete switch over, you can get up to 10 grand back in a rebate. So they're really pushing people in Massachusetts to switch over. So I got to say that, like, the heat pump technology, that was one of my favorite techs of, as you can tell from me raving about it, 2023. Yeah. And the last one I'll say is that my iPhone 15. I really love it. I got the iPhone 15 Pro Max. It's no surprise I love it. It's just like every year, it's an iterative upgrade. It's not groundbreaking, revolutionary. But I do love in the camera, the ability to do that zoom that's got that longer telephoto, optical zoom that really makes a difference sometimes. If there's one thing I can get in a camera that would be better, it's always the zoom. That's the really thing. And I mean, the nighttime pictures are great and all that sort of stuff, but getting that longer zoom was really great. So that's been our favorite tech of 2023. I'm sure everybody has different things that they could pick. If we'd love to hear from listeners, what was your favorite tech of 2023? And maybe what's your favorite tech you're looking forward to in 2024? I know for some of our panelists on some of our other shows, the Vision Pro is on there, or the Meta Quest 3, or some other things like that. So I'd love to hear what folks are thinking about for their favorite tech of 2023 and what they're looking forward to. So let us know. So right now, we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Technology, including Simon, Missy S., Francesca M., Jaden P., and Mike H. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Technology and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So we get some headlines we'd like to talk about, and our first headline, we had a story like this on guys who investigate scientific studies and try to find fraud in them. This one is sort of related. It's a story from The Hill about how science is littered with zombie studies, and here's how to stop their spread. And so what they point out is that studies are often retracted or corrected, scientific studies, after they've been published. New information comes forth, they realize they made a mistake, or what have you. And they say since 1980, more than 40,000 scientific publications have been retracted. But the problem is there's no central way for someone to find out that a study has been retracted. And so there's still out there, and other researchers are using them and citing them in their own research. And it makes me wonder, like, is there too much research? Are there too many studies? Is there too much of a push to, publish or die sort of thing? What do you guys think of all this? I mean, I look at this as from an outsider perspective, and maybe, the scientists and the researchers themselves could refute this. But what do you guys think of this zombie studies, but also all of these studies?
Yeah. I mean, it's a real problem. I mean, you do hear cases of studies that have been retracted or disproven, but they're still cited over and over and over again. There's one that comes to mind, but I won't mention it here, but it's yeah. And then they keep getting cited in new studies. Those studies get cited. So yeah, I mean, it comes down to due diligence. I mean, if you're writing a paper or an article and going to cite something, I mean, you should be able to see if it's been retracted or withdrawn. So I definitely think this is a good step. Yeah,
what you're referring to is that there is organizations working, so Crossref and Retraction Watch, to create a database of retracted zombie studies, which has to be hand curated, but it would be a central clearinghouse for researchers to go to.
And Wikipedia was built, right? Yeah. And Wikipedia has been built to the monster it is today, right? That could be applied to the same thing and use technology to solve this problem. Now, I think you wouldn't want to give the same level of, or maybe you would, this is up for debate, the same level of openness to making a thing of scientific studies and notations of retraction to be as open. Do you want it to be more closed that only certain people with certain credentials have access to it, or what? But there needs to be something made of a database to be able to
at least to reference it. Yeah.
And the technology's there.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, AI is being used to find plagiarism now. It should be able to go through and quickly see if the studies you're citing have been redacted, or the citations have been, removed or whatever.
That's a good point, because Dom said it has to be done by hand. And I think maybe we're wrong on that.
Right.
That that it doesn't have to be done by hand. Could you use AI to build a wiki site, cross-referencing these and which ones have been contradicted by each other and reading them out or whatever you would do?
I mean, the database that they're talking about in this article is of the retracted articles themselves that the researchers or others related to the original studies are retracting them, and it can be a 2-year process to retract, even when the author is asking for it to be retracted. It can be a 2-year process to retract an article. But you're right. It would be nice to see something that goes beyond that, to find all of the studies that a zombie study has infected, and get the corrections out for those as well.
This goes to more global problem, though, of information retraction, right? How many news articles do we have out on the internet that are incorrect information? So a newspaper puts out an article and they put out a correction. How many times was that article reprinted on different sites without that correction?
Yeah, I've seen that a lot. Yeah.
And so then on top of that, then you have AI not knowing where to pull from the correct things.
Right. Which is the correct information to pull from, right?
Yep. And so there's this whole other level of it, that it's not just on studies, it's on news and information. And then we can get in that whole dirty word of misinformation, but it's not so much misinformation as it is like too much information. Like, do we know what the right information is? Because there's such a plethora of it.
We're overloaded with information, and the average person can't absorb it. You see this even within tightly siloed areas of our society, whether it's, Catholic stuff for like Vatican news, which is a pretty siloed thing, but you see things get dropped out of, about something coming out of Rome, and it spreads throughout the world by the end of like the morning. The East Coast wakes up, and by the time the West Coast is getting their coffee, it's everywhere. And then later on that day, it's like someone's like, whoa, that's not what happened. But it's too late. It's out. It's on Twitter, and everybody's now believes it. Yeah, you're right. It's the spread of misinformation, and this is just another example of it, is key. Is a crisis, really. Now, what I don't love is having the fact checkers at the various social media sites in charge of misinformation stuff, but it's something we have to be aware of anyway. It's something we all have to take responsibility for.
Dom, I'm gonna have to retract a statement you said. It's not on Twitter.
It's on X.
It's on X.
Yes, I know. If you go to twitter.com, I know you end up there. So it's still.
What's the address for X? Twitter.com.
Right, exactly. Speaking of studies that may not be worth the paper they're printed on, so the headline in the Financial Times, which is a prestigious newspaper, is the internet use does not appear to harm mental health, study finds. And according to this study from the Oxford Internet Institute, they said they found no evidence to support popular ideas that certain groups are more at risk from technology, from the internet, and they're even disputing some of these more recent studies that talked about how teenage girls in particular were negatively affected in mental health for depression, suicidal thoughts, body image from social media. And I don't know. This is one of those cases where I want to wonder who's funding the Oxford Internet Institute. You know what I mean? That's a key. That's a question you always have to ask, is who paid for the study to get done?
Yeah.
So, what do you guys think of this? I mean, am I being too conspiracy minded?
My holding is I'm sitting looking at this going, have the people doing this study met a high schooler lately?
Right.
Because that's the only thing I need to debunk this study is, and I'll, just talk to them about it, and they'll tell you that they know it's hurting them.
What I just want to mention, one of the things that the way the standards of the study is, they did a broad-based look at the entire world, and they say, well, the vast majority of the studies published in this area focused on English-speaking countries. Well, more than 90% of young people live outside North America and Europe, and so that's going to skew the results. But the fact is okay, but in America, North America and Europe, if you focus on that, yes, it is really bad, as opposed to when you take a broader look at the entire world. So I'm not sure that you're debunking anything with this study in that case. Victor, what do you think?
Yeah, the Financial Times article wasn't super informative, so I did find the entire study is published out there, and I'm not someone who reads studies quickly. It's a very it's not super long, but and could pick things out. But this might be a case where kind of the signals that we intuitively would recognize might be buried in the aggregate data. But I don't know to what extent they break out, the data that I'm looking at. They looked at two different sources of data. One was people self-reporting basically their own state of mental well-being. And so that was one part of it, the more subjective. And then they looked at, and I haven't dug into what specific they were looking at, but they looked at various mental health data, which I don't know what exactly is available there, but it was, for 200 different countries, looking at, markers of anxiety, depression, and self-harm. But I don't know if they tie that to amount of internet usage per individual. I think this might be a case where like you're losing some of it in the aggregate, in the aggregate there, but I need to look into it a little bit more.
So another question of it is, what do I define as bad mental health? And so their measure of bad mental health, if I'm measuring that bad mental health is something that has a side effect of promiscuity and using internet pornography and things of that nature, and I define that as negative, is this study defining that as negative, right?
Sure.
Because if it's not, then what I'm viewing as the internet having harm to mental health is not what they're viewing on harm to mental health.
Sure.
And so, the thing that I see the greatest effect on especially young men right now, but not casting young girls aside, because I know there's a problem with it, but is the plethora of explicit content out there and the way it's broken down society. And that is a mental health problem.
Yeah.
Does this study admit that? Yeah. Does this study admit that as a mental health problem? And I would have to know who's funding the study, but I'd be willing to say no.
Yeah. And it doesn't look like they analyze like how much internet usage, whether they tied, hours per day to negative mental health outcomes. It just seemed to be, percentage of households that have internet in a country, it looks like. So okay, great. There may be some kids who are using it 30 minutes a day because that's all the data, plan they can afford. There may be some where they're, on it 16 hours a day, but you're not weighting that against the negative outcomes.
And they admit that they don't have access to enough data to say, if apps do harm mental health, only the companies that build them have the user data that could prove it, he says. So I mean, he's kind of, they kind of giving away the game right there. Is they like it's sort of, it's like I said, it's very broad based. It's a very broad, generalized look at this. But I think it's so broad and generalized as to not be useful in that case, unless you drill down, and that's what you got to do.
do the self-driving features of our cars cause accidents? Well, we're not going to give you access to the metadata of the self-driving cars so they don't cause accidents.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of, it's the same argument. It's the like, well, we don't have the data, so therefore it's not happening.
Yeah. So, last headline I want to get to before we get to our picks of the week is an interesting one. It's sort of technology related because it has to do with online tech. The story from the Washington Post: a rural post office was told to prioritize Amazon packages. Chaos ensued. So the framed narrative here in this story is about the post office in Bemidji, Minnesota, which is a very small town up in Minnesota, where people are not getting their mail. They're very important, checks and invoices and all this sort of stuff, because the postal carriers are being overwhelmed with packages. What's happened is the U.S. Postal Service, in order to stop losing money, has been contracting with companies like Amazon, UPS, FedEx to do last mile delivery, especially in areas outside of the big cities, where they don't have to have, UPS doesn't have to have a big distribution center. There's a post office in every town, and so they're doing all of that. But what's happening is that more and more people buying more and more online. There's the more and more packages going through these small post offices, and there's the post office is simultaneously having a shortage of personnel to deliver stuff, and they're getting overwhelmed. Of course, the Postmaster General says it's all, it's isolated instances and has to do with some supply, whatever the excuses that the politicians come up with. What do you all think of this? Is this a real problem? I mean, should we be making Amazon instead of more distribution centers and not use the Postal Service? What do you think?
I don't know if we've been for a while, and I don't know what happened with this Amazon. It was shown that Amazon was getting discounted rates and things. I don't know whatever happened with that. So are they paying the same price as everyone else?
They have a contract that they got with the Postal Service, but the details of it are not. The Postal Service says it's a what are they called? Private business transaction.
Because of course, it's a public company.
Yeah. Well,
it's a public company, but whatever.
Well, the Postal Service exists in that strange public-private gray area where some of the stuff they do is, private. I don't know. It's kind of fishy to me, but it's the way that the Congress has organized the Postal Service.
They're a private company that can afford to lose $6.5 billion a year
because the taxpayers will
not have to restructure.
We'll pick it up. Yeah.
So this is kind of a joke, but it's a serious comment. It's something that Congress needs to fix.
Right.
Slide whistle sound effect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, that's a serious comment, but it's kind of a joke too. It's not going to get fixed.
Right. Well, it's a political hot potato. Yeah. Nobody wants to wade into that one.
Yeah. Well, they signed the contract. I mean, and who's to say someone's Amazon package isn't as important as somebody's, flower catalog, seed catalog.
Right. Well, it's like one person was saying, oh, my husband's medicine comes in the mail, and what if that gets delayed? Well, I use Amazon Pharmacy. What if my medicine doesn't come to me from Amazon Pharmacy? I mean, it's just, packages are packages in some instances. And, there's this frivolous and important stuff coming from both places, through, whether it's first class mail or my Amazon package or whatever. So,
yeah, to hit it at it from a rural area, they used to say 2 to 3 day delivery. Now it's 2 to 3 days from when we ship it.
Right.
And they have corrected that. And so I have less and less ordered stuff off of Amazon. Actually, probably have more moved towards buying stuff more in town, because of the slowness of Amazon getting to the rural areas. And so my hope is that we can help out our local businesses a little better. I like to keep them open. I find it worth going and spending the extra $1 or $2 to buy it at my local everything store than to keep him in business than to wait 4 days for Amazon to get it to me. So plug in there to support small local businesses.
Well, and, even here in the Metro Boston area where there's a Amazon warehouse every 3 towns, I find it sometimes I order something and I don't know when they can't tell me when I'm going to get it because they're going to be sending it to the U.S. mail. And it's really kind of frustrating. But I tell you one thing I do like about them sending things to the U.S. mail is I know my mail carrier. That's the same person comes to my house every day, and I know her by name. And like if I'm going on vacation, hey, Tammy, I'm going to be away next week. I did put in a mail stop, but can you make sure that my mail is held until I get it? Sure. Like these are your neighbors. These are people whereas Amazon drivers, it's a different guy every time, who comes to my house who throws the package in the direction of my front door, you know what I mean? And takes a picture of the sky to prove that the thing was delivered, It's just it's a different relationship with your mail carrier. Oh, and I gotta say, our UPS guy too, I don't know him by name, but I know him. He and I know each other by sight.
That's the thing that UPS and USPS have going for them is the regularity of drivers. And so there's a relationship that's built. Mm-hmm. And then you hear people with the fed up thing with FedEx, right?
Right.
And then your Amazon drivers, those two, it seems the drivers change a lot.
Right. They don't get the same route every day. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and Amazon is largely independent contractors too.
Right.
Who are doing it. Yeah.
Yep. So So I'm not sure what the solution there is. I mean, more USPS, less USPS, maybe hire more postal carriers. I don't know, but I knew it's interesting to me that they're taking these steps to try to keep the postal service in business. There was not too long ago when we all assumed no one would ever send first class mail anymore. There would all be email and etc. And that has not proven to be the case. So it's interesting to see. So those are our headlines. Let's move on to our picks of the week. Father Joseph, you're up first.
Okay, my pick of the week is a GitHub site. It is Mike Royal's Windows 11/Windows 10 guide. And this thing is basically every bit of information you need to know about setting up Windows. And yes, I get the irony that one of your Linux guys is sharing a Windows site, but I set up lots of Windows computers. But this is just, it is a 33-part guide, which we all know 33 is the perfect age and the perfect number. So it is the perfection of Windows guides if the numbers meet there.
It could have been 42, but
it could have been 42. That would have been even better, but that would have had the answer to everything on it. Maybe he's not admitting to have the answer to everything. But yeah, it goes everything from setting up your computer to file transfer to networking to your gaming to emulation to, I can't list everything. It is everything you can think of.
Comprehensive. Yeah, I'm looking at this and it's like it is wow. Like if it's not in here, it's probably not Windows related. It's pretty extensive. It covers everything.
So this has been this is kind of one of my go-tos if I get stuck on something, or if I'm just bored and I want to mod up my Windows PC a little more, I can find some other fun things to do on here. So
it's an excellent resource, and I think it would be a great idea to check it out. For if it's funny, I sometimes get a criticism that this is an all Apple show. And it's funny to me because there's more Linux guys on this show than there are Apple people, frankly. And there's also got a number of Windows folks. So thank you for including that in the picks of the week. That is a great resource.
I think their reasoning is that every show has the Apple user on it.
Well, that's true. I'm just
maybe that might be part of it.
I'm here waving the flag in the corner. So Victor, how about you? What is your pick this week?
Yeah, not to stay on the video game track again, but I did, one of my Christmas presents was another handheld game system, but this is for people who don't want to order from AliExpress, don't want to mess around with ROM files. This is actually a completely self-contained, like pocket-sized, it's very thin, very light, game system that comes preloaded with 18 Taito arcade games from the classic age of, so like Bubble Bobble, Space Invaders, and many others that you can just turn on and play. But the real draw for me was, it's, as I've mentioned on my pick of the week a couple times, is I'm collecting Evercade cartridges, and Evercade is a company or a format where they'll release $20 cartridges, a couple of them every month, that have a curated collection of games, usually indie games, some, classic PC games on data cartridges, just like old, Game Boys used to use. And so for $60, you get this handheld that's, I think just the perfect size, plays Taito games. There's also a Capcom edition as well, but you can plug Evercade cartridges into it as well. So if that's something you think you might want to, and it's, you don't have to mess around with ROM files, if the legality of that concerns you, or, where do you find ROM files? It's, completely legal. And it's a lot of fun. You can just turn it on, play it, turn it off, chuck it in your pocket.
Excellent. Very nice. So my pick this week is some Mac software. So there you go. And in fact, it's Mac software for us old guys. So when the Apple Silicon Macs came out a few years ago, they have the same basic CPU as are in an iPhone or an iPad, and so you could run iPhone and iPad apps on your Mac, which is really useful sometimes. Except sometimes, because they were designed for smaller devices, the type is really tiny and a little bit hard to read, especially if you set your monitor to a pretty high resolution like I do. So it's on GitHub. It's a app called Pixel Perfect, and it does the one thing: it increases the text size on iPhone and iPad apps that you're running on your Mac. That's it. That's all it does. It lets you increase the text size so you can read it. And you know what? It does a really good job of it. It works. It gets out of the way. I don't even notice it after, once I've run it. It's just there, and it works. And it's a nice little app that lets us old guys read the text on the screen.
I'm proud of you that it's from GitHub and not from your normal repository.
Yes, it's not a SetApp. It is a not all my software comes from SetApp. Let's put it that way. But, this guy's making it available for I think it's for free. I forget if I paid for it or not.
If it's on GitHub, it's free.
Yeah. I don't think it's shareware or anything. I think it's or even
it's open source. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So, so it's a nice little free app to make life a little easier. So, and that is, those are all of our picks of the week and everything we have to do for this week. So I want to take the moment now to ask folks, what did you think of anything we had to say in our discussion? We'd love to get your feedback, and you can send us your feedback at sqpn.com/technology. or the StarQuest Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Send an email to technology@sqpn.com. Visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord. And you can find links from our discussion and picks of the week on our show notes at starquest.fm/TEC240, Tech 240. Follow the Secrets of Tech in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, or on YouTube at our YouTube channel, where you should make sure to hit the bell to get notifications. And until next time, Father Josephson, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of technology.
You're welcome.
Victor Lambs, thank you as well.
Thanks, Tom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.